Hello, hello, and welcome to Crosstalk, where I'll be having a nice conversation with the mind behind Ellixar Anayrus, Queensguard. Ellixar Anayrus, that is. So, let's get into it. So, Jaxon, hello, welcome to Crosstalk, where we're going to take a little bit of a look into before the time of Ellixar, and then during the time of Ellixar, and then your final feelings afterwards.
All
So,
right.
who is this Ellixar Anayrus? Like, give me a brief overview of this character.
Okay. Yeah. So there's a few different answers to that question, but the answer is Corvo from the Dishonored series, and also Fit Chivalry from the Robin Hobbs Farseer trilogy, Robin Hobbs Farseer trilogy novels, because I am not really one for like too much high fantasy, but when I heard that there was like, oh, that we're doing a nobility campaign, I had just played Dishonored and I just started reading those books, and I was like, I'll do a Queen's Guard, I'll do a Guards part, like that kind of deal. But then I leaned way too into the Dishonored, and I accidentally made a detective, and that's the second time I've done that.
Okay. So, not even. Ooh, that is interesting. Pulling from different types of media. But more specifically, I believe Elixir was a multi-class.
Oh,
So, let's
that is
let's
so
go over the
much.
level split and
That's
why.
what you meant. Okay. Level split. So we were told to make level 12 characters. I just simply cannot resist having skills and that sort of thing. And since I was also playing a rogue on Talion, I was like, I'll just do another bard, but I'll throw some sorcerer in there. Okay, how can we do that? I looked at all the sorcerer thingies, and I swear I made this before Baldur's Gate came out. I said this during the episodes, but I was like, oh, psionic, aberrant mind sorcerer. That's like super cool. Oh, what if there's a thing where it's like a mind virus because mind flares and stuff? Because that's just D&D lore. And I put 3 levels specifically into it because I wanted those spicy level 2 sorcerer spells, and thank God I did, because one of those spicy level 3 second level sorcerer spells was Calm Emotions,
Oh,
which
Jesus. Yeah, that one
did
did
a
kind of.
lot during that finale.
Yeah, it did. Oh, yeah, spoiler warning. I'll add that in earlier. So,
No, no, this is like the after show.
kind of the after show. It's also like a little bit of a look into your kind of character creation process and things like that. So, knowing that we were going to be in the first millennium of Telion when the main story takes place in 16 something. So we're roughly 6 to 700 years earlier than the main story that we've been following in Telion. How did that kind of change your building process, and it also being a short-term campaign, knowing that it was only going to be 4 to 5 sessions? How did that change the character creation process for you specifically?
So I think out of everybody that played in this, I know the least about Telion because I'm the newest one to table mentality in a way. At least newest one in this group. So I knew the least about Telion, and I had just joined as a Wayland in the main series, and so I was like, okay, I don't know a whole lot of lore, and so I'm just going to see what we got here. And like, nobility, I was like, okay, nobility. So noble house, I talked to Olivia with that because I knew I wanted to do something with Olivia because me and Olivia have great chemistry
Yeah, you
because
do.
of how much GTA we've played. And so it's like, okay, I know I wanted to do a noble house with them, and that is also like very much based on Lou Wilson and Emily Axford. And I haven't even seen the full series. I've just seen the clips that people post on YouTube
That's
because I
the
don't have
like the
Dropout.
Fey one, I believe.
Yeah, like A Court of Fey and Flowers.
Yeah, where they're
hmm
the bird
They're
people.
the bird cousins. I thought that was great. I thought that was so funny. I was like, I gotta do that. That's so funny.
Yeah.
And so that was a lot behind like the whole nobility thing. The bard thing, again, it is just because I do not like getting caught without spells, and I like having high rolls and stuff.
And did this being a shorter term campaign kind of affect your writing process of the backstory, the character creation process with the level mixing, any of that?
Absolutely, because I didn't think about like arcs. I thought about moments because it's only going to be like 4.5 episodes. You don't, there's not much character arc you can have in 4.5 episodes, but there's a lot of great moments that you can make.
And you
And
definitely
so
did have some.
I chose all of my spells accordingly. Like animate objects, if you've seen Time After, you know that I'm like a big fan of that spell. And my other bard, I really need to break this habit. Okay, next one's a fighter. Next one has to be a fighter. Like this is not. I can't continue with this. I can't be typecasted as the bard that has animate objects. But it's like okay, I chose animate objects for that. I didn't know what the time window was going to be, so I was like, glyph of warding could be very funny if done right. Bestow curse, I've never done it correctly, but I've always had it.
It's one of those Hail Mary type
Yeah.
spells that you just like, if it works, it'll be so cool, but it has such a low chance of
yeah.
success.
I did Hail Mary it though, and it didn't work. But the other Hail Mary did. A spell that is, I'm gonna just say, probably one of the first, I want to say 3 people in table mentality history to cast the spell Calm Emotions. I just want to throw that out there.
I think you're the only person that's ever done it.
Let's fucking go. That's exactly what I was going. No, it wasn't. I just like I need a spell. I only have level 2. Help. Calm Emotions.
Yeah, and it was also one of those. It only worked so well because we didn't make it into phase 2, the final fight, which would have given the bad guy legendary actions and legendary resistances. So they went into that first half of that fight without anything, which is why you guys were able to get away with so much with the spell casting.
Yes.
But before hopping into the end, we had talked about using Glyph of Warding and all these other things. And those were more for protection-based spells because of your job, if I remember correctly. So what's the whole story behind the title of Ellixar, Queensguard? You're already a noble within the city of Aranshi's, but you had this extra layer to you as well, being a Queensguard. So how did that come about?
Mm-hmm. So Queensguard again comes from like the media that I was consuming at the time, which was the Dishonored's game. As like if you've played those, you know Corvo. He's also like a Queensguard, but in a very different way. He's like a go out, murder a lot of people in very cool ways. I was not that kind of character. And I was reading the Farseer trilogy by Robin Hobb, which is severely underrated. I want to say nobody talks about her, but like I'm just gonna like throw some shots out at the book talk people in our Discord. I think it's better than Brandon Sanderson. Don't come at me. I know Catherine's gonna text me later and be like, "I'll kill you with my bare hands," and I'll be like, "Hey man, it's just I just read the books."
Yeah, but how did Ellixar? There we go.
Yeah. So, but the reason it was like all Queensguardy and more of like the image I had in my head was like tasting for poison, casting locate object, and then like the aberrant mind, reading mind thing of like, okay, is anybody thinking about trying to kill this lady? And that's like very much in line with like skilling. That's what they call magic in the Farseer books. They call it skilling, and it's like all mind based magic. And I was like, that's so super cool, but I need like real spells as well.
So it's just kind of a case of right place, right time to have been around the Queen for a moment just like that.
Exactly. And it's like, I think compared to the rest of, most people, I don't really like writing too much backstory because I'm used to making like level 1 characters or like people at the beginning of their journey. It's hard for me to write people in the middle, and this case the end. Just throwing that out there. And so I don't write a whole lot of backstory because if it's like a level 1 character, this guy's level 1. He hasn't done anything yet. Like, don't give him much. He found his dad's sword. Okay, good. He's good to go.
Yeah, I've been having the same kind of issue because for one of the upcoming games we have with Jeremy being the host is we're starting at level 1, and I'm like, my dude's backstory is 11 pages long, and I don't even have anything written for his backstory. Like I have all these notes about it, but I have never like fully written it out because there's nothing to it. He's level 1. There's nothing about it.
Mm-hmm. In my mind's like levels 1 to 3 could be the backstory in most of the characters that I make, because that's when I'm still like figuring them out. Because a lot of this stuff I like to plan it in the moment, because I hate to say this, but some of my best work has not been written down beforehand. Half of the things I write down, I throw out the window the second they come up because I'm like, this actually sucks and I don't like it. And especially, like, you can tell. Oh, I was also reading Picture of Dorian Gray, and the voice that I had for this character was, this is going to sound like Lord Henry from that book. And he's like an uptight snob kind of guy. But then I kind of dropped that, and I was like, this kind of sucks. Which is why I can't keep a consistent voice on any character, and they all just default to my own Southern accent.
That's fair. It's a good Southern accent.
Appreciate that.
Before we get into like the actual events of the game, are there any other backstory stuff you'd want to like kind of talk about? You've said like there's not much to it, but is there any other like important notes that just didn't come up in the main series?
Yeah, so like there's things that came up, like well, things that didn't come up, like Ellixar like did like basic training in like the guard and all that kind of stuff. It started as like a standard guard, but like, you know, doing bard stuff because bards still get proficiency with some cool weapons like long swords and junk. So like you can still be a guard and do that. But it was mostly like I wanted to have like the psychic like brain curse that's slowly killing me because I just love I love it when characters have like a, what is it? Like not a prophecy. There's like a word, bro, a fate. Like their fate has kind of been determined for them already. Like Guts from Berserk with the Mark of Sacrifice. There's probably others, man. It's the one on my head. But like he's got this disease and he knows that there's really probably nothing he can do, and so he's just gotta like he just wants to keep everything together. He wants to get as much done as he can, especially like as an elf. Like, you know, you're like an elf as like a kid. You get told you're gonna live for 1,000 years, and then in your like 300s, you find out that you've got like brain worms. They weren't worms, by the way. You know, to whoever's watching, I don't know what it was. I was just like, I just kind of like threw it in. It's like, this might come up, this might not. This is up to you, but like, it's a thing.
Yeah, it was one of those. We kind of had it on the back burner the entire time, but it's like we can make a moment out of this, as you had kind of said earlier. And I think I did give you a little bit of information about what that actually was after the fact. I think it might have happened in the round table. But it was just like, it was your grandfather's spirit just didn't want to leave and kind of stayed in you and was just kind of rotting your own brain. It was this weird, like, ghostly just apparition just staying within you.
Yes. And that was pretty cool. I thought that was a great answer.
Yeah, because it really fit into the final line that Ellixar got to hear before the end of the show. But now let's hop into where things started getting a little bit more interesting. This event had a lot of NPCs, and a lot of them were very over-the-top dressed. Ellixar kept it fairly formal. What's the reasoning behind that?
That I did like put some thought into that. So he wore like house colors, you know, like the greens and the teals and a little bit of red and purple, which are like sort of the Anayrus house colors. Because like me and Olivia just decided like we need a sigil, we need house colors, we need like all this stuff, and so we kind of coordinated with that, and it ended up with like, you know, 2 green suits walking in at the same time. But I just like that was kind of a choice because it was like I knew that it was gonna be like that. It was gonna be like nobility and people going above and beyond, and it's like, yeah, he's gonna go there to this party, but he's gonna be thinking about work. So he doesn't want to have on like, you know, like extreme tailcoats or shoulder pads or like chainmail made out of wedding rings or some crap. Like it was like, no, just like a suit of the house colors, the ring with the sigil on it, and also like the sigil. I have that written down somewhere. I think it was like an owl and a candle, which it never came up, but we liked the idea of it.
Yeah, and getting into like not wanting to work at the event, what was Ellixar's thought process? Like, you knew you were going to be invited because you were so close with the queen, but what were the emotions behind you're invited, but it's not a work trip.
Yeah, very much like bad feeling about this and like trying to force himself to sort of enjoy it. Which is why like, uh not too much mingling because like a lot of people were mingling and I wasn't really tied to any NPCs besides the king and queen and like my coworker who was very good in that fight.
They did try
But
their best.
I wasn't really like tied to any NPCs. I was like, I'm gonna let everyone NPCs and I'll just interact with the player characters.
Yeah, but there was one NPC that you did try to interact with, even outside of the event happening, which was
Yes.
the Orb of Magic's Mir Devere.
Yes. And that was because of like what is it, a misunderstanding on my part for some beforehand stuff. But it was also like Mir Devere cures magical ailments. I'm pretty sure my ailment is magical.
Yeah, like it was very sound mind, and it was also one of those moments of Mir Devere in this time was probably the second to third most untouchable person in the city, and you work with the third and fourth. So
Yes.
it's just like this person's even more untouchable than the people I work for, and they're just standing around, kind of not interacting. So it was like this. It was this really interesting moment
Yes.
of you walking up and them just be like, "I don't know who you are."
Yeah. I thought that was really funny.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's enough NPC interaction for me. I'm gonna watch everyone else and just sort of like pay attention. Or
Yeah.
do my best to.
And then we get into the actual main event. Your weapons are locked by the little shits in the nicest way possible that are working the event.
I work
There's
in a movie theater, I know how it is.
yeah, there's 4 tables with all these different NPCs. Were there any of them that you really wish you could have gotten to interact with out of like the 20 plus NPCs in this event?
So the one that like really like kind of blew me away and it was after the fact was the Grand Sorcerer, and I was like, I wish I talked to him because like he just like Sundriel Zafir.
Yeah.
Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, Saphir.
Okay. I was like, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. Like the
Yes.
everybody disappears. I thought that was so cool. And I was like, well, now I wish I talked to that guy. But the
Yeah.
one NPC that I had interactions with was not at the event. It was an NPC that never really came up in the campaign. It was Madame Soul Reader.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm gonna just let the audience know because this is like some session 0-ish kind of stuff. But this is an NPC who was like a divinator. They could like tell the future kind of deal. And my character went up and was like, laid all the cards out on the table basically. I've got this thing and it's wrong with me, and I'm like, I've just got this nice job. And I also like, have a noble house that I kind of need to take care of. And the Madame Soul Reader was like, yeah, I'm gonna keep it real with you. You're dead. Like, it's over. You've got some time left, but if you don't get it figured out, you're gone. And then she was right.
Little did she know. But going into like this whole Madame Soul Reader and Sundriel Zafir, both figures that are from the outer ring of the city, from the outer wilds, where a lot of the more unique people seem to have resided in, and is the one area of the city that you didn't get a lot of time in. Because you had to spend so much time close to the Fracture or in the Noble District that you never really got to go out into the Outer Wilds. Because if you went out there, man, you would have had one hell of a time.
Yeah, because, it's less law, it's more like, okay, yeah, okay, you're like a revolutionary, okay, but to which monarch? It's not the one I care about? Okay, whatever. Or like, yeah, man, y'all are gonna do what to the castle? Yeah, no, we can't have that. But if it's like, oh, I sell like counterfeit checks, and it's like, come on, man, what are you doing here?
It's like, come on, at least pick something cooler.
Yeah, underground fights in the Undercity. Okay, I guess that might be my tempo. I'm pretty sure me and Val, I don't know if this ever came up, but I think me and Val said that I showed up to one fight and performed. Like there was one where I actually kind of like performed a little bit after like some alcohol, and that did not come up, but it is canon.
Amazing. going into like all the session 0 stuff and the character creation as well brings us to the kind of idea of this campaign, for as short as it was, because of how many NPCs had so many interconnected webs of just things that were happening, that I had to find ways to put red herrings in. Because I don't, at the point of the like dinner, did you have any idea who the bad guy was going to be? Like, were you already on to Mir Devere as the one that's potentially going to be a problem?
Not at all. I thought it was the big guy. I'm looking for his name. I was on Mir Devere's page. Oh, hold up.
The big guy.
The one that got fully bisected.
Oh, yes. Gordrak.
Gordrak. Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's the most red herring evil guy name. By the way, you did great on that.
Yes,
yeah,
Gordrak.
Gordrak.
Gordrak was the original red herring, but when all the stuff with Rosk became such an issue in the session zeros, I was like, I now have 2 red herrings you can throw out. And because of your being able to read mind stuff, you catching on to Rosk, you latched onto that so hard. Let's talk about it. That was one of the big moments of like episode 1 or 2.
Mm-hmm.
So like, what was happening there?
If you haven't seen the table talk, it was kind of revealed that there was some behind the scenes issues that happened where beloved DM Monty stepped away for like 5 minutes, and then a bunch of lore got dumped out onto Brian, who did not need to know that yet. And I heard all of this, and like, so I kind of like knew some story before it happened, and I knew some stuff about some guys, some like people with tattoos and some murders, and so I kind of had that in my mind, and I knew it was connected to not Mir Devere, Mar Lavore. I knew it was connected to Mar Lavore somehow. And so I was on the lookout for that because I thought that was going to be the big bad. I did not think Mir Devere at all until afterwards.
Mm-hmm. It was so much later that at least you would have thought it would have been Mir Devere, because I built that character not very well in a sense of they're the untouchable, so of course they're going to be the bad guy. So to counteract that, I had to put 2 very obvious bad guys in front of you that just were not bad.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like they still murdered people, right?
Like, Rosk, yes, absolutely, but
yeah, Rosk still killed. Like, that'll watch the Brian episode for that. But Rosk killed some people, and so like that's still not good. And I think I talked about this on Roundtable as well, but I have a Google document called Ellixar's Notebook where I have like written down in character all of his case files, and the one with the Ashwalker, it's called the Ashwalker case, and that's like the first one. And so like I was like gleaming at that the whole time. I was like, are there any clues in here? Wait a minute. Uh-oh.
Things are starting to add up, and it's not good.
And it's not good. And so I made what, even though it did not amount to anything, in the moment, that is probably like the most adrenaline I've ever felt in my life, besides on an actual roller coaster and in an actual car crash. Yeah. Like, it was great.
So it was just also one of those moments that it happened as one of the big events of the story happens, and then the way you guys cooled down from a very intense combat that I thought you guys were going to run from, that's a whole different story to talk about, but thank you, Mar Lavore, for ruining that plan.
Yeah.
With Ross just randomly leaving, it kind of felt like that through line just disappears. And it could have easily if that conversation didn't get brought up during the short rest afterwards, which that just brought in this very intense moment of, we're the only ones left, we have to figure this out.
Yeah. And that combat was great, by the way, because I had a moment where I was like, oh, this isn't, if you've seen Time After, the other bard I play, their name is Junebug. And I was like, oh, this isn't Junebug, because I tried to do animate objects and then immediately got knocked out. And I was like, okay, this isn't going to work. This isn't a combat bard. That was a combat bard.
Yeah, Ellixar was definitely...
This was not at all.
Yeah. Ellixar was more set to be an assistant, but just got his shit rocked right off the rip against the living magic. Mar Lavore was able to tank a lot of it, but the couple that were able to run rampant did not show any mercy towards Ellixar.
Yeah, which like it happens. But also like running in D&D, it's always an option, but you never think of it in the moment.
Oh yeah.
It's because none of us started with tabletop RPGs. We all started with like video games. And you don't run from a fight in a video game unless you're playing like a FromSoft game. Like that's the only game where even then you can't run from a boss fight. And so it's hardwired in our brains to where if you get into a fight, it's either like swim or drown. Like there's no other options. But then we think afterwards, like, oh, we totally could have run for that.
Yeah, and I think the Anayrus family would have easily like wanted to have ran after seeing the rest of the nobility kind of just like disapparate with Sundrial.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it was mainly because of Elias and Marlavor that you guys just weren't able to because they were so locked in. They were hungry for that.
Yes. I'm especially for Ferundel, because Ferundel didn't have any like ties to anyone in there besides me. And my tie was the queen. The queen was still there. I couldn't go. I gotta like either die at this lady's feet or rescue.
Mm-hmm.
Or do something.
Yeah. So going off the red herrings, we had Kordrak, we had Rosk, which both of them disappeared before the events of the living magic, but so did Mir Devere. So when did it kind of sink in for you that Mir Devere was the problem?
It was after so like it was after the combat because it was living magic and Mir Devere is like the magic person. And so I kind of clocked it then, but even maybe not clocked it, but like, oh, they're heavily involved in some way. I did not really think they were going to be the villain until we got there because I was still thinking it was going to be Kordrak.
Yeah.
Or again, I thought that Marlebor was still involved in this somehow, and I was prepared to take him out at any point, even though I would have failed because like I'm a bard.
Yeah, and paladins are fairly unstoppable once they hit a specific level. It is very hard to balance them, as we had seen very blatantly in this run.
Which is why I play a rogue on Telio.
Yeah, I hate paladins, but that's a whole different story.
I don't know. I have beef with every D&D class to some extent, and that's like a lot. That's like I think 14 now rants. Is it 14 classes?
I think it's either 13 or 14.
Yeah. Except Blood Hunter. I mess with Blood Hunter. But like Matt Mercer. But like every class I've got something wrong with it that I don't like. And so it is very difficult for me to pick a class in general.
That's very fair. You do have that propensity towards magic, it seems, besides Wayland.
No, for real. Wayland's the one time I was like, okay, this is gonna be like a arcanophobic character, but that's for the Wayland crosstalk. When that, when he inevitably gets punted 200 feet in the air or some shit.
Yeah. So we had all these little talks about the red herrings, who's the bad guy, who else you'd want to talk to. But like Sundrial Zephyr is one crazy figure to have talked to, but are there any other options that you'd be kind of interested in out of the other 20 NPCs? A lot of them were also mundane. Like Temba Poldrite, the royal tamer, he was mundane. He just had some dinosaurs.
He was, but I liked what he had going on, and I think we clicked. But I liked him. I liked the Heart Stitcher and like everything that they had going on. I also just was cool hanging out with the little like magic apprentice that Ferundale like failed out of the class. I was totally happy hanging out with them. But
little Esperus.
Interacting with Esperus. But like interacting with NPCs is something that I like doing it. It's not that I don't like doing it, but like there's like 4 players here, and I've played enough like D&D 1v1s basically where I'm like, okay, we gotta talk to each other because I know how hard it is to just talk for 3 hours straight.
Yeah, it is definitely helpful being that person that can just easily grab onto someone else and be like, okay, we're gonna talk now, and this is what we're gonna talk about. Okay, our scene's over. Anyone else want to talk?
Which is why like I'm so prone to just talking with the other PCs. Except like you got to get lore sometimes. That's just how it is. But it's like everyone went in, it broke into like 4 different scenes, and it was like back and forth. And I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna like add to this chaos. I'll hang out with the people at my table.
Perfect.
And that also is like in character because I'm a nervous wreck right now. I don't need to be mingling.
Yeah. So let's talk about the last couple episodes.
Those were good episodes.
After that crazy combat, you guys got a short rest, and you had to do that full-on sprint towards the fracture district.
Ever, by the way, that was awesome.
That was a 100% improv skill challenge.
Like I said, most things are, but I love skill challenge them because there's another show I listen to called Rolling with Difficulty on Spotify with Overly Sarcastic Productions, Red. And they do skill challenges a lot there, and I mess with it so much. It is so much cooler than, okay, everybody roll an athletics check. Okay, oh, you got a 12, you trip and fall, and you're going to be like 10 minutes. And then that's it. That's so much worse. Like, everybody had like Batman moments.
Yeah. And like, especially like once you got to the fracture district, you guys had to have been exhausted at that point. You had been running for such a long period of time, but I was like, in a series that's this short, giving you one level of exhaustion just isn't viable in a situation like this. And knowing what the layer actions were going to be during the final fight, I was like, I can easily just start stripping them of spell slots instead of exhaustion. There's this level of energy going throughout the city. I could just start pulling spell slots. And that's so much more thematic than saying, oh, you have 1 point of exhaustion.
I liked that a lot more too, because that was like, it felt at the same way like more punishing and also more forgiving, because it's like, oh no, that's a whole spell slot, but also like I still have my skills and like human brain.
Yeah,
so
like
I can handle this.
It would have been more detrimental and more annoying if I would have had you have to roll it with disadvantage on a bunch of skill checks. Like that would have just been a waste of our time. And we were already running too long in the first place. It's like, we have to expedite it, something a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
Going through the caves. Yeah. Going through the cave system. And just like those last few scenes before the final fight. The atmosphere was just so quiet compared to all of the craziness that had been out in the city. What was Ellixar's reaction to the Kordrak scene?
So in my head at this point, there was like a murder board basically, and it was like everything sort of tied together. And it's like, okay, now who did this? And then there's like 3 suspects, and it's like Mirdavir, Kordrak, and Rosk. And so Rosk had like a big old circle on him. I see the Kordrak corpse. I'm like, cross that out. Okay, who do we know for murder? Oh yeah, Rosk. And I was like, okay, word. So it was definitely them, and somehow Mirdavir's involved.
Yeah, so you guys got a decent amount of hints between the grim psychometry, which, man, that should have a cooldown on it. But I'll talk about
awesome.
that with Brian.
Yeah.
Because you got a lot of hints from very meticulously exploring the offices. What was that place called? The Hall of something? Hall of Purging. Within the Hall of Purging, there was a good amount of information gained from there, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But passing the Kordrak was like, well, it's not him. We only have one place to go left, and it's farther down. I was also
terrified because I was like, oh, this dude totally had a pregnant wife. Oh, she's totally here somewhere. I was like, there's no way you went there. But I was like, in the back of my head, like, he could have went there and this might be very bad.
Yeah. In the giant document that I had sent you guys for this, as Olivia did highlight it, there is a single sentence in there that was the only reason Kordrak and Yorva were there. And it was that this fracture, if you're birthed close enough to it, there is the chance of getting the amplified magic from the fracture and becoming a wild magic sorcerer.
Mm-hmm.
And they knew,
cool.
Yeah, and they knew that they were pretty low on the high tier nobility. Like, they were barely invited to this event. Like, they needed to revive upon their family name. So they had to take that risk, only to be found by a crazy person.
Yeah. And I think that that's really cool because there's sort of a like a foil there because my character is a sorcerer not by choice and it is actively killing him and they're like let's throw this unborn child into like a sea of raw magic and hope it works.
Yeah, it is a huge risk reward, but
Mhm.
as I have mentioned somewhere, I don't know if I've mentioned it on recording, but the princess of the Silvalore family, Mazine, she is a wild magic sorcerer.
Mm.
And at the moment, she is in Tarragorn.
Yeah. Oh, I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah,
That's
little spoiler. I think I
crazy.
was talking with that with Olivia because she has no stakes in the current Teleon story. But
Yes.
yeah, Mazine is like confirmed by me to be a wild magic sorcerer, and that's how this fractured district came up. That is how this entire story and city got built, was because of Mazine, who I built years ago.
Mhm. That is really cool. That's like actually crazy how far away that started.
Yeah, the Teleon has been, people have been playing in Teleon for 6, almost 7 years at this point, coming up in June or July. I can't remember exactly. So there, I've had a lot of time to create lore, and still,
Mhm.
there's so much to build in this game.
Yeah, I have sort of kind of got stuff like that. The closest I have to that is an Edge of the Empire sort of campaign that's had three different not player characters. Yeah, three different player characters. Just me and the same friend because we mess with Star Wars. It's so like my longest running campaign. Well, bro, George Lucas wrote it. Wait, no. George Lucas's wife, Frank Herbert, and Kurosawa. George Lucas did minimal work. I'm a hater like that.
Speaking of being a hater, the
Yeah.
spells
Oh,
used in the final combat.
oh, you're the hater.
Yes, I am the hater. Because I
Man.
believe Mir Devere had like a plus 11 to their wisdom saving throws and still rolled awful. So we get into the final combat with Ellixar kind of trying to talk them down, but as we had learned, they were just too far gone at that point. They were too lost in the sauce that they just needed to gain more and more power.
Yeah, and like really all I could hit them with at that point was like if I wanted to like fight like everybody else, I could hit them with catapult. You know, I could maybe if you give me like an hour, I could hit them with like a glyph of. I also like scorching ray, but that's 2d6 damage. My cantrips do
That's true.
better. Gotta have something better than your looking around. Calm emotions. Wow, I don't remember picking that. That's because it comes with aberrant mind. I don't think I've ever read this spell before, and so I read it for the first time there, and I was like, maybe charisma, and then I threw it out.
Yeah. But like you start this conversation with Mir Devere, they have their little speech, and then this Titan version of them just lands in front of you.
Oh yeah, that was a real treat. Because like I knew that because like I was also I believe set out first because I wanted to see if this could be solved with words instead of a very climactic combat that a lot of time went into, you know. But you know that classic bard thing.
Yeah, the words were
And
trying, but
the word the words you have to try, like you have to try to throw the football over the mountains even though you know it's not going to go there.
yeah, if anything,
But
it did.
yeah,
You do know that you had some reaction on them, because if you didn't have that interaction with them before the combat started, I don't think they would have had the reactions during the combat as well.
yeah. And which like I did not stop the combat from starting, but by golly gee willikers, words sure did end it.
Yeah, and being this far back in the timeline means that a lot of spells weren't created. And old Mir Devere, whenever you unfreeze, this will be just looking at me. old Mir Devere
Oh,
was a simulacrum, which it was not a spell at the time. Like that was just pure will creating a secondary version of himself that just failed.
yeah. Which, like, man, it's crazy to think that some spells just didn't exist back then.
Yeah. Like having only a few hundred years after the Age of Giants, that's the first time they're able to write stuff down, start to actually learn and memorize. And because you're able to do that, you can finally start to adapt and create. Where they were just stuck in the Stone Ages getting pelted by rocks, they were not able to have these beautiful libraries and stuff that they had during the series, which was the reason why it was able to be built such a big city, is all this adaptation that they were able to do and continue to build upwards. But yes, you did finish the combat that you tried not to start. So let's talk
I need to
about
stop putting myself in these situations.
So I want to get your feelings on the ending for Ellixar and then the epilogue not too terribly long afterwards. What was kind of going through your mind with all of that?
All right. So the ending, I was just so flabbergasted that that actually had worked, and you hit me with those, like, like, I knew I was cooked when everyone else left, and it was just like, oh yeah, there's like I'm done for. But I was super happy with it. I thought that was the coolest thing ever, and like in that moment, you said it was like you said 3 souls like converged,
4
and that kind
souls.
or like there were 4 souls because there was Mir Devere, Simulacrum Mir Devere, me, and uh, the grandfather in my brain that's been ripping out my frontal lobe. And so it's like in that moment, I was like, okay, I was sitting there and I was thinking, and I was like, oh my gosh, Ellixar would have been the perfect name for an alchemist. Why did I waste this on a bard? It literally spells elixir. And then I was like, oh wait, yeah, we're in the finale. I gotta stop putting myself in main character situations. I intended to make a side character. Yeah. So the main deal with that is I never really intend to make main characters, but as is the nature of tabletop role-playing games, everybody's gonna end up having main character moments because that's just how it goes. And I knew that, like, I put basically the catalyst for a self-sacrifice in there somewhere. I did not think it would be it would be the thing that happens in the story.
Yeah,
I didn't think that would be the grand finale. I thought that would be the thing that happens right before the grand finale, and then somebody else figures something out.
yeah, like we were at the point in time where like, okay, this has gone over episodes, longer than I thought, and I knew that there was this idea sitting there that Ellixar could easily be the end all be all to it. Like he could be the sacrificial lamb for this. So I really played into that, knowing that you'd be okay with it. Because that's how we kind of built the characters. We knew we didn't have a timeline. Or we did have a timeline on it. So playing into that whole feeling of, okay, he knows he's going to die. He's asked for help of Mir Devere a couple of times now. And they're finally broken enough to want to help.
Yes. And I had a backup plan as well, me and Brian did. The backup plan was, okay, my brain melts and starts falling out of my nose, and then he learns Revivify or like a resurrection spell on the spot or something. He figures it out. He locks in.
Yeah, that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah. I mean, he could have also brought me back as a zombie in a very untasteful situation.
That's also true. That is the thing he could have done.
That's what I told him to do. And then he was like, okay, but what if you're just a zombie then? And I'm like, then it happens.
Then we ball with that.
Yeah, then we ball with that. That's just what happens. The point of the system is what it does, you know?
Yeah. And to kind of wrap up most of the most of the talks for Ellixar, it began with discussions of getting a statue with your cousin, and it did end with getting a statue of yourself. But you weren't around to see it, but the ghost of Ellixar wasn't too terribly far away at that same point in time. Ellixar hadn't gone to Limbo yet, so they did get to see their statue and or statues, I don't remember how many, were built by Farandul.
That's up to Farandul. They had the budget.
Yeah, they are now in charge of the budget as well. But I think it was a really fun story to have this ending for a character. And it's a legacy character at this point.
In a way, what do you mean by legacy character?
Legacy in the sense of you built this character with the expectations of them dying, got them to die, and still fulfilled their dream of a statue.
Yeah, I think that is. I said earlier, like, I didn't want to have, like, arcs in mind. I think that's definitely an arc because, like, I mean, it fell somewhere, you know? There was change that was made. There was not a hero's journey, but some kind. There was definitely a change because, like, you know, they're dead and they're a statue now.
And then the final question, unless you have anything else.
Let's see, I got the Ellixar joke out. That was the main thing I've been sitting on because I literally, it was like after session 1, I was actually like, I should have named it, instead of Ellixar, I should have swapped the syllables and said XLR because a bard named XLR, that's hilarious because, like, that's just, you know, microphone cables.
Now the final question of our little crosstalk. Did you enjoy your time as Queen's Guard, Ellixar?
Oh, absolutely. I am the most satisfied with this character so far. And that's probably because the other two that I've played on Table Mentality they're still kicking, and I can't have that.
Yeah, their story still has to be told, whether it's long or short. They're still around.
Exactly. So, you know, there's still some stuff going on there. And who knows, maybe Waylon will get punted 20 feet into the air. Who knows, maybe Junebug will come back and, like, jump off the floating city. But what is it? I love me a good heroic sacrifice. It's like my favorite trope.
That's good to hear.
I thoroughly enjoyed Ellixar. My God, I made the freaking microphone cable joke, and now I'm getting them so mixed up. But no, I enjoyed them so much. They were so fun, and that was, like, such a great group of people to do that with, and, like, also, like, incredible story, and had some incredible moments in it. That just had, like, a bunch of great moments in it.
That we did, and may he rest in the many pieces within the mines underneath the city. Thank you, Jaxon, for joining me for Crosstalk. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time in one of our many different shows. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.